Assalamu alaikum.
Peace be upon you. In the name of Allah Almighty, and praise be to Allah, and praise be to our Prophet Muhammad and his companions. Those who are under a war are facing injustice, and they will be victorious. Peace be on Gaza, peace be on Palestine, peace be on the bloodshed over there, peace be on the resistance in Palestine and in Lebanon. Today, Palestine is the key to dignity, Islamic dignity, humanitarian dignity. At the very beginning, Mr. President, it's my pleasure to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for hosting this meeting, this 14th important meeting of the OIC, and it's very important at this particular time, at this very decisive time in the history of the region. And this extraordinary meeting is there for us to talk about the main topic now in the Arab and Islamic world, which is the Palestinian issue. This is the worst crime that has been witnessed by the people in history. The heroes of Gaza are there, and we need to take a decision to sort out the problem. And the entire Islamic world must be united, and through this unity, depending on Allah Almighty, the ability of Allah Almighty, we can sort out the problem. We also need to depend on the abilities and capabilities of the Islamic world in order to save and rescue the entire Islamic nations. This organization must play a right and important role in order to symbolize a moment of unity. Iran has understood this, and the good neighboring policy is always adopted by Iran, and we are opening our arms for friendship with the Islamic countries today. And on behalf of the nation of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, we are meeting today in order to go and help and support the Palestinian.
Shalom everyone, welcome to Messianic News Channel. Today I have a very important update for all of you. As you saw the video, about 59 Muslim nations got together in Saudi Arabia to plot the destruction of Israel and to defame Israel with all sorts of evil, lies, and slandering. It's time to pray, and it's time to take a stand. Basically, the main tactic of the enemy is always lies. Pray for Israel, and pray that Israel will receive Messiah, because in Messiah, Israel is strong. So I will tell you what's happening. They are using all sorts of evil lies and a complete distortion of what's happening. Here, the leader of Iran is accusing Israel of being a dictatorship, practicing brutality, genocide, all of that. And I could keep going on and on and on. Now, the hypocrisy is, he seems to be so concerned about the Palestinian brothers, but in reality, his people, some of his people in Iran are starving because there's a lot of corruption, a little elite takes all of the money, and a big portion of that money goes to finance terrorism. So he accuses Israel of brutality and all of that, but he doesn't acknowledge that Iran has been sponsoring brutality since the Iranian Revolution. Back in the 70s, when they confiscated the properties of thousands of entrepreneurs, where thousands of Jews lost their businesses and needed to escape Iran, where people against the regime were slaughtered, raped, without any trial, without any justice. So he talks about brutality when he's actually the leader of one of the most brutal regimes in modern history. He talks about Israeli bloodshed, about the poor Palestinians, but he doesn't mention that Hamas is 10 times worse, raping, slaughtering, chopping off babies to pieces, putting bombs all over the place, shooting rockets at innocent people. Some of those innocent people are not even Israelis, are just tourists passing by. Even Arabs, they have killed a lot of Arabs in the rocket attacks. So he's accusing Israel of not abiding by any type of law or international law, when in reality Iran has been sponsoring terrorism in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, and in Israel by sponsoring terrorist organization Hamas. Then he goes on to quote the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad and all this big show, not putting attention that according to the very Quran, actually, even the very Quran recognizes that the land belongs to Israel. The Bible, the Hebrew Torah, says that the land belongs to Israel, and the New Testament says that the land belongs to Israel. But of course, they are not going to show that aspect of spirituality. They are going to twist the truth to make it look whatever they want. And also he talks about the prophet and how the prophet Muhammad is indignated because what's happening in Israel, but he doesn't acknowledge that Abraham is greater than Muhammad. He's the father of nations. And they are killing the children of Abraham. Israel are the children of Abraham. And by the name is Abraham. It's not Ibrahim or Abraham or Obrahim. No, it's Abraham, which means father of nations, only in the Hebrew language. They don't acknowledge that within Islam, there are at least 29 prophets that happen to be Jewish. They talk about Ezekiel, they talk about Jonah, they talk about Noah, they talk about Adam, they talk about Prophet Isaiah, they talk about King David. All of these guys were Jewish and they spoke Hebrew and they worshiped Yah. They were not Muslims speaking Arabic and worshiping the Arabic God or the Muslim God. They worship Yah. But of course, he's gonna omit all of that information. He talks about Israel of serious violation of human rights, but he fails to say that there are 2 million Arabs that got Israeli citizenship and they were fine with Israel, and they have the highest standard of living in the Middle East. He fails to recognize that Israeli Arabs who are doctors, engineers, contractors, real estate developers, and so on, most of them have a salary 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7 times greater than any Islamic nation. He fails to recognize that Israel is the only country in the Middle East where actually women do have rights and where small religious minorities can practice their religion. So he talks about Israel as the big occupier, but he fails to recognize that the Jews had been in the Middle East for at least 4,000 years. And actually, hypocritically, about Iran, Israel has been in Iran thousands of years before Islam was created and before Turkish and Mongolian and Arabic tribes actually got into Iran. So ironically, a lot of the Jews have more right to live in Iran than Iranian people themselves. There are some Iranians that come from the ancient Persians, absolutely yes, but a lot of them come from random Turkish, Mongolian, and Saudi Arabian tribes, and they arrived to Iran to obliterate Jewish communities that were in Iran at least 1,000 years before they were even born. So he talks about Israel, about this colonial power and occupier, but he fails to mention that Islam has been a colonial power and an occupier, completely butchering ancient Jewish and Christian communities all over North Africa. Islam had nothing to do with North Africa. Islam was pretty much a movement that was born in Saudi Arabia, basically amongst the Arabian tribes, and they went on butchering a lot of tribes and civilizations that were thousands of years older than Islam all over North Africa. There were Christian communities, there were Greek communities, there were ancient Jewish communities that were completely obliterated. Also, he fails to mention, since he's so puffed up in this anti-Israel speech, he fails to mention that the 2 million Israeli Arabs, they don't have any intention to move to Muslim nations. They are fine in Israel, they have way more rights, they are way more happy, and they have a way higher salary. And if Islam is such a wonderful place, how come this 2 million Israeli Arabs didn't immigrate to Egypt or Jordan or Saudi Arabia or Iran or whatever? Because they know that their quality of life would immediately plummet. They have the highest quality of life in Israel. Now, it's very sad what happened with the Palestinians in the West Bank. They don't have the same salaries as Arab Israelis, but part of that is because terrorism, and part of this is because Iran financing endless terrorist attacks against Israel has damaged the Palestinian economy. So basically, they are just slandering Israel with a lot of evil lies. I think the scenario of Ezekiel 38 is around the corner. The entire Islamic world wants to unite against Israel. So keep Israel in prayer and keep spreading the truth and spread this message. Thank you and shalom to all.